Good morning on and Boker Tov on this wonderful Sunday morning. It is in some way it is still Purim, and let me explain. Even though Purim was on Friday, Shushan Purim was yesterday, but in Jerusalem this year we have what's called a Purim Mishulish, a three-part Purim, a Purim divided into three. Because whenever Purim comes out on Friday, so Shushan Purim, which is the day, as the Megillah says, the next day that the city is surrounded by a wall, celebrate on Shushan Purim, celebrate the next day on the 15th of the month of Adar. So they celebrate on Shabbat, but since on Shabbat there are certain parts of Purim that cannot be celebrated. So the way it works in cities like Jerusalem, that they will then celebrate both on Friday, Shabbat, and there are certain things they'll do Sunday today. So in our unity and oneness with our fellow brothers and sisters in Jerusalem, we all feel Jerusalem, being the holiest city, represents us all. We all feel somewhat that celebration even today. But nevertheless, to learn something from Purim, for sure you can do, and take a lesson from, and celebrate and learn and so on from what Purim has to tell us. Let's start with some tzedakah. So Hashem blesses that both you and I should be inspired by today's Torah class. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'akol niyah bidvaro. Okay. So, years ago, probably 40 years ago, I was listening then, it was still on a cassette recorder. I do not remember the name of the fellow I was listening to. It's just, there was something I listened to then that somehow stuck in my mind. I remember this 40 years later. I was listening to a tape, a recording of a psychiatrist or psychologist that became like a stand-up comedian, and it was very much based on true life stories that he experienced as a therapist. And many, they were funny because they were based on life, and also some of the things that he shared was thought-provoking. So there was one thing there in that tape that I remember. And he said the following story. He said he had a client, a patient, that suffered from the following mental health sort of breakdown, which was that every single person, this woman would come down from her bedroom on the second floor and would announce to all those present, and Mazel Tov, congratulations, she gave birth to a child. What was the problem? Where does this daily announcement come from? So he said that tragically, this woman could not have children. As much as she wanted to have children, she wasn't blessed with children. A woman who doesn't have children is, of course, very broken, you feel incomplete, etc., etc. And so she had a mental breakdown. She literally had a mental breakdown. And the way she sort of mentally dealt with it is that every single day she was convinced and would announce and would want everybody's recognition and acceptance that Mazel Tov, she had a baby. And the psychologist, the therapist giving sharing this story to the audience, asked the following question. He says, I ask you, should I try to heal this person or not? If I heal this person, then she's going to have to deal with that agony all over again. Or should I just allow her to be in her sort of blissful, self-created bubble of happiness? That was the question that he asked. He did not answer the question. And I remember the question in itself stuck in my mind. This is a question that that here it's describing a bit of more of an extreme case, but we all have those type of sort of bubbles that we create that that maybe sometimes it's necessary. It's a question, and I bring this story as a somewhat introduction into the Purim thought that I'm about to share. This part of the story of Purim, and I'm assuming that hopefully all of my good friends here listening to this Torah thought today heard the Megillah and are familiar with the story of the Megillah. If not, it's not too late. Go ahead, open up Megillah, available very easily. And so over there, the Megillah, as part of the narrative, part of the story of the Megillah, tells us that Achar Hadvarim Ha'ela, after the whole episode of Vashti refusing to come when Achashverosh summons her, and then Achashverosh kills Vashti, finds a new queen, Esther. But let me shut this off. I thought I did. Why is this not shutting? So he thought he found a new queen, and he found a new queen, Esther. And then the Megillah continues, Achar Advarim Ha'ela, after this whole episode that rocked the Persian Empire. So, I'm not reviewing here the whole story of Megillah. There's a lot of beautiful messages and nuances in the story of the Megillah. But here it says, Achar Advarim Ha'ela, Gidal HaMelech Achashverosh es Haman ben Hamdasa. Melech, the king Achashverosh, went ahead and he moved him up a sort of in rank, Haman ben Hamdasa, and he became basically the viceroy, and he everything, and the Megillah continues that everybody bowed down to Haman, and Haman was the at the top, just under Achashverosh. And the Megillah continues and tells us that Mordechai lo yichra v'lo yishtachaveh. However, Mordechai, it's everybody is korim u'mishtachavim laHaman. Everybody is bowing down to Haman. The only one that does not bow down to Haman is Mordechai. Mordechai lo yichra v'lo yishtachaveh. He would not bow down. Not bowing down to a human being. The Medrash even tells us that he wore an idol on his neck and so on. Mordechai maintains his Jewish and godly pride and commitment, subservience to Hashem and to no other. And the Megillah goes on to tell us that Vayimolei Haman al Mordechai Chema. Haman could just not. He went berserk. He couldn't handle it. He had everything. He had everything he needs. He had all the honor. But there was one Jew, Mordechai did not bow down to him. He couldn't overlook that. And then the Megillah tells us that Vayivakesh Haman, that Haman therefore decided that he has to annihilate the entire Jewish people. And here the question, and the Rebbe addresses this in Purim Tafshin Chavav. Just as a side note, I had the merit to be at the Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson's Farbrengens, many Purims. Until the Rebbe passed away, I had the merit to be many Purims, probably 20 Purims that I had the merit to be at the Rebbe's Farbrengen. And they were very special. It was just a uplifted, holy, spiritual, joyous atmosphere, excitement, holy excitement that was just palpable at these Purim Farbrengens. And Purim Tafshin Chavav, which I was not there, I was only a half a year old at that time, but I was not at the Purim Tafshin Chavav Farbrengen, but I heard a lot of stories about what happened at that Purim Tafshin Chavav. And over there, the Rebbe asks an obvious question. Which in other words, was this action of Mordechai went ahead and triggered Haman to issue a decree and to convince Achashverosh to issue a decree to annihilate the entire Jewish nation. So the Rebbe asks, why so? If Mordechai, remember, at that point in time, the other members of the Yehudim, the other members of the Jewish nation, did bow down to Haman. They did participate in the meal that Achashverosh that Achashverosh hosted for 180 days. In fact, the Talmud explains one of the reasons why the Jewish people were under such a harsh decree of annihilation is because they became so comfortable and they were so happy to be invited to Achashverosh's party. Right now we're just like everybody else. We don't have to maintain our unique Jewish identity. So it seems like all the other, or at least many of the other people of the Jewish nation were in sync and in line with Haman, and they bowed down and they gave him the kavod, they gave him the respect that he deserved, and so on. One fellow, Mordechai, didn't bow down, and Haman decides I have to kill the entire Jewish people. Why not just eliminate Mordechai and finish? Mordechai's not bowing down. Go over to the king. He probably wouldn't even have to ask the king and just annihilate and just eliminate the Mordechai. As Kol HaYehudim, no, I got to eliminate the entire Jewish nation. Why? Even during World War II, often, and in other times of pogroms and so on, often our enemies and the anti-Semites would annihilate or eliminate the leaders of the community, and then the rest would unfortunately fall into place because there was no one there to inspire them, to hold them, to unite them, to withstand the challenges of its time. So why is it that Mordechai... So the Rebbe went on to explain that the Megillah itself answers this question. The Megillah says that Vayevakesh Haman looked and searched to get rid of the entire Jewish people because Higidu loyas am Mordechai. They told him, who are the Higidu loy. They said to him, they told Haman, am Mordechai, who is the nation of Mordechai? Meaning Haman understood that something that sometimes we don't even understand. It's often, as it says in the Psalms, often it is from our enemies, whether it's Hamas, whether it's Stalin, whether it's Hitler, whether it's Tito, so whoever it is throughout history, often they understood things about us that unfortunately we might have forgotten. What Haman said, where does this come from? That a Mordechai will put his life on the line, not bow down to me. Where does that come from? What's the underlying drive for that? He understood that it's not just an individual Mordechai. They told him who is the nation of Mordechai. So Haman understood that within every single one of us, there is a little Mordechai. The essence, the core, although sometimes covered and concealed and confused, the inner core of each one of us is a little Mordechai. And therefore Haman, who was the representation of evil, of idol worship, and so on, understood, he got to the bottom of it, he got to the core, he understood that it's not just Mordechai that's irking me, that I want to get rid of. I want to get rid of the core drive and idea over here, that core power of spirituality I got to get rid of. Higidu loyas am Mordechai. They told him the nation of Mordechai. Haman was not confused whether, who I am. Am I having a baby today or not? Haman understood very clearly, and he was right about that. Higidu loy am Mordechai, and that's why Vayevakesh Haman searched out and understood that I have to go ahead and eliminate. If I want to get rid of this problem, I have to eliminate the entire Jewish people. And that's why we celebrate in the way we celebrate. We celebrate in a way that we value every single one of us. We recognize the truth. We're not confused. We remove confusion. As I said last week, Megillat Esther, we uncover that which is hidden. That's why on Purim we come together, we unite as a people, we recognize the oneness of each and every one of us. And through that, we combat and we bring out the truth that Haman understood, but in a positive way. I say this also as a tribute to my stepbrother. Last week, right after Shabbat, I received sad information, sad news, sad news. That last year, literally a year from today, my oldest stepbrother passed away. And this past Shabbat, not yesterday, but the week before, um, my second stepbrother, who I was close with, and he was an amazing, warm, and caring individual, and he passed away last Shabbat. So I want to share this following story, which sort of sums up sums up a big part of who he was. Some of you listening know who my stepbrother, he was the Rosh Yeshiva in Tzvat, which is the largest of the Chabad Yeshivot. He was a great scholar, great Torah scholar. He was what in Hebrew and Yiddish we call a pikach. He was a wise man. He didn't only have knowledge, he had wisdom. He knew how to apply that knowledge in helping thousands of people. And most importantly, he was a Rosh Yeshiva. He was sent, I remember when the Rebbe sent him, Tovshin Lamed Zayin in 1976 or 77. The Rebbe sent a group of newlyweds to Israel, and he was sent to establish the Chabad Yeshiva in Tzvat, which became the largest yeshiva. And the reason why it became the largest Chabad Yeshiva is, and I remember growing up as a young boy, and my teen years with great pride, that this is my brother, the Rosh Yeshiva of Tzvat, because everybody knew you could turn to Rabbi Wolshansky for advice, for care, for dedication at the Shiva. Whoever walked in said, to me, I know it's a cliche, but to me it was real, that he was like my father. I could turn to him knowing that I have a real confidant that cares, and I could ask him how to deal with challenges I had in my life. And on that note, I want to share the following story. So, right as the funeral is coming to an end, I have a nephew. I saw this story shared by Rabbi Ashkenazi, who is a nephew of my brother through marriage. But at the funeral, as soon as the funeral is over, my nephew, Sandy, one of my brother's sons, turns around and he sees a fellow there that he knows for a number of years. And he says to him, I want to tell you that I am sorry. Guy says, you're sorry? Why are you sorry to me? I'm here to honor your father, your great father. So he said to him, let me tell you why I'm apologizing to you. He says, years ago, as you know better than I, you were kicked out of the Yeshiva Katana. Let me explain. Yeshiva Katana is sort of like the equivalent of middle school yeshiva. Then there's Yeshiva Gedola, which are for the older students, which is actually post-high school. Yeshiva Katana is probably high school. Yeshiva Gedola is like college. And my brother was the Rosh Yeshiva of the college level of yeshiva in the city of Tzvat. He says, you were kicked out because of your terrible behavior. You were kicked out of Yeshiva Katana. Last year, your senior year in Yeshiva Katana. And your parents came and begged my father to take you into the yeshiva, even though you were underage and you were kicked out for behavior. And Sandy says to this fellow, he says, I told my father, I said to my father, how could you accept this boy? He's going to ruin the yeshiva's reputation. You take him in, the other parents will be upset, they'll be disappointed. You just shouldn't do it. Don't do it. And my father said to me, I only agreed to take him to the end of the year. It's a couple of months. Okay, that ended that conversation. The year is over. The next year, I hear that you're back in. My father accepted you for the next year. And again, I came and told my father, you can't do this. Everybody knows that this boy is trouble. He's a boy that the other kids don't want in class. He's a boy that the parents will be worried. Why are you doing this? You're hurting the yeshiva. You have to. And my father said, he is staying in yeshiva. He is staying in yeshiva. And if anybody doesn't want to send their kid, let them not send their kid. He is staying in yeshiva. And he says, I have to apologize to you because here you are today. Baruch Hashem. You got married. You grew. You proved everybody wrong. You established a beautiful, wholesome Jewish family. So I have to apologize to you because I tried convincing my father not to keep you in the yeshiva. And in sort of classic, somewhat humorous, the fellow responded to my nephew and says, I'm sorry I caused you such anguish, such aggravation. There are hundreds, if not thousands of stories like that I personally know. Some of which I don't know hundreds of thousands, but some which I personally know of. That was my brother's attitude. My brother's attitude is that he was not confused about what's the real Mordechai within each one of us and the potential. If only the proper love, the proper genuine care is given. In other words, these ideas are beautiful ideas, but sometimes practically there are certain realities. In other words, let's say we talk about a school. Does a school accept every single child? I'm not an educator. I'm not a school principal, and I understand that there could be challenges. However, what I learned from this story is that the question is, what is the first attitude for number one? One lesson over here is that the attitude is not, okay, I have a school, I have a yeshiva, I have a family, I have a community, and I only work with those who fit into sort of my box and will not cause me any sort of aggravation. No, the first approach is we recognize that there's a little Mordechai in every single one of our children and every single one of our students. And every single one of fellow individuals that come our way, there's a little Mordechai. That has to be the first attitude. And then we have to ask ourselves, do we really care? Does it really bother us? Or do we really have the love to be able to bring out that little Mordechai in our children, in our fellow community members, in people that God has by divine providence brought into our circle? And even if we personally, and this is another important thing, if we personally feel we cannot, for whatever legitimate reasons we come to a conclusion, we cannot go ahead and help this person, do we rack our brains and say, okay, who can I introduce them to? Who can I connect them with so that they do move forward and feel loved and feel encouraged? So this is all part of the Megillat Esther, the story of Purim, from Haman, from Ma'oivai Techakmeni, from the negative forces. You could learn much of how we should direct that in the positive and the lessons that we learn from that. So that's the message. That's the tribute to my brother, who genuinely. I once heard over here there was a fellow, also blessed memory, Rabbi Shmuel Engel, who was a teacher for many years. From when I was a child, I remember him a teacher, and he said, a teacher that does not love and care for every child in his classroom does not belong in the classroom. So that's teacher in general, but even to all of us who are not necessarily teachers, we all have disciples, we all have students, we all have people who look up to us, we all have people who come our way that we could bring out that little Mordechai that they have in them. So this is the lesson to be learned from my brother. That would be a great inspiration, a great way of honoring my brother, because that's truly how he lived. Again, countless stories about that. So if you could think about it a little bit in memory and honor of my brother, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Ben Zlata, that would be a personal appreciation. So thank you for listening, and have a wonderful and blessed week.